everybody, and welcome to another episode of Adventures in DevOps. This week, I'm your host, Charles Max Wood from devchat.tv, and this week we're talking to Slava Koltovich. I hope I got close on your name.
Yeah, you did it very well. Surprised.
Hey, there we go. I can at least say names right, even if I don't know anything else, right?
Yes, you do.
If you're a DevOps engineer, learning is constant. There's always something to keep up on, new technology to manage containers, how to keep everything up to date, what's going on in the Linux ecosystems that you're managing, et cetera, et cetera. Educative.io helps with that. They're a platform made from the ground up with software and DevOps engineers in mind. Instead of making you scrub back and forth through videos and spend hours on setup, their courses are text-based and feature live coding environments so you can skim back and forth like a book and practice in browser as you learn. One of the courses I recommend is a practical guide to Kubernetes. Kubernetes can get a little bit complicated, and this just breaks it down step by step and walks you through the whole process. It's awesome. They have other courses that cover topics from DevOps to machine learning, system design, and much more. And each course has a free preview so you can poke around free of charge. On top of that, you can visit educative.io/adventures to get 10% off any course or subscription. Check it out today. Do you want to just explain to people who you are, what you do, why you're important?
Yeah, sure. Can take a couple of minutes. So, I run a company called Kublr, and Kublr is a Kubernetes management platform, which we started a couple of years ago with the focus on, really delivering the cloud-native experience or helping larger enterprise to adopt a cloud-native technology set. And that's what we've been running with for last 2 years, helping one enterprise after the other. So I think we can, go deeper, but as I mentioned, our primary goal with Kublr is really make sure, or really help those organizations to unlock value of cloud native technologies and Kubernetes specifically in their own reality, which
Nice.
is, always concerned with networking, security, and all other stuff.
Yeah. Now, a lot of the email and other stuff that I read talked a bit about enterprise, and everybody I talk to kind of talks about enterprise differently. So when we're talking about enterprise and the people that Kublr is designed to help, I mean, who are these folks?
Well, it's, probably wouldn't be surprised if I say that half of our customers are in financial sector, right? Financial institutions or software development companies working for financial institutions. So majority of them have a very specific security requirements around how they deploy applications, how they run applications, right? So very specific networking requirements on what can be connected, what cannot be connected, what ports are open, what are closed, and so on and so forth. So, and this is where those are scenarios where I would say majority of cloud providers, or in those cases, cloud providers just cannot deliver enough flexibility in setting up a solution, right? So it's managed service, one size fits all. You either take it or, route a flag. And then, some of our competitors, I would say, also not flexible enough for these specific configurations, but that's our primary use case when we, have, as I said, so very, very specific security and networking needs, and we can, deploy Kubernetes in those kind of on those kind of infrastructures and those kind of environments.
Right. I'm really interested to understand, the particular need, and so you're talking about the level of flexibility and, like you mentioned, which ports are open and who can authenticate and all this stuff. And I've seen some solutions around this. So what is it that, when people get in and they're going, okay, I'm looking at a competitor, I'm looking at Kublr, what are the options that people are, choosing you over the others for? What is that flexibility? What does it look like that they're not getting from one of the others?
Well, there's, to be honest, so we are relatively new, new guys on the block, right? So the majority of our competitors started at least a couple of years earlier and have bigger minds, mind share. So we normally come to our customers as second choice, right? So they try someone else.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't name those competitors, but they try some of our more known competitors. They like it for development. They like it for testing purposes because those environments are usually not that locked, right? So there's more flexibility over there. And then when they build a solution and they try to push it to production, that's where the whole fight starts, right? So security team comes with a very specific list of what needs to be done. And then, some of those competitive solutions just don't have enough, checkbox configuration points to hit to accomplish what is required. And so that's normally starts a fight inside organization where, DevOps or IT team comes back with security saying, well, it's just not possible. And then, the fighting with security is not the fight you can win, or, in most cases you cannot win. So, and that's where I think Kublr gets a chance to offer a side-by-side comparison or side-by-side deployment. And normally we would, do our deployment in a couple of days where our competitor failed to deploy in a couple of months. And so that's what normally drives the deal.
Right. So let's say that I was going to use Kublr. So I'm deploying this into my Kubernetes cluster.
Well, you actually, Kublr is a Kubernetes cluster, right? Or it's basically a platform to deploy your Kubernetes clusters, right? So you use Kublr to deploy clusters in, your public clouds or your, on-prem infrastructure, VMware, VMware setup, or just, pretty much everything that can run Docker engine.
Okay, and then I just manage it from Kublr.
And then you just manage it from Kublr. Yeah, so Kublr provides all those, login and monitoring and backup, disaster recovery, updates, upgrades, all this kind of stuff that you need for day 2 operations.
Now, is this on premises? Like, do I deploy Kublr on premises then, and then manage the cloud from an on-prem machine, or is it a software as a service that does it, or does it actually run in the Kubernetes cluster that it manages?
So it's not SaaS, right? So that's a box that you own, and you can deploy it where you want it to be deployed. So Kublr itself runs inside self-bootstrapped Kubernetes cluster, and to some degree it manages itself, right? And depending on what your target deployments are going to be, so you can deploy Kublr platform in your data center, and then from this data center you can create clusters in the same data center, different data center or public clouds. Or if you, let's say, only AWS, you can deploy Kublr platform in AWS and then provision clusters in AWS as well. So I gotcha. It's really flexible. So there is a number of components where Kublr, like centralized logging and monitoring that you need to plan for, because if you deploy across clouds, then the traffic or the information will flow from one side to the other side that you need to kind of think of. Yeah. But in general, it can run everywhere. That makes sense. So because it sounds like, you have a whole bunch of knobs and dials over here, right? So I can control the cluster. And then I've got reporting and, notifications and things like that. I was browsing your website and it looks like you can send notifications like Slack or PagerDuty or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I'm looking at the graphs or the information that I'm getting back, how do I know that the cluster is healthy? Or how do I know when I need to go fiddle with some of these knobs and dials? Yeah, there's a couple of layers. So let me, go back a step and, just give you an idea why we started or why we build functionality that we build today, right? So I used to run a service company, and Kublr was actually a spin-off out of the service business. And in this service business, we, worked mostly for larger enterprises, so let's say Fortune 500 and so on, usually helping them to deliver stuff to production as well. So when Docker and Kubernetes became available, Oleg, who is the CTO of Kublr and co-founder of Kublr, came to me saying, hey, we need to do something about it, right? So that's the future. This is how we will deliver software to our clients for next, 15 years. And there are a number of good reasons for that. So we try to deliver Kubernetes to, the just raw open source Kubernetes as it is to our clients. And then we realized there's a lot of gaps between what open source Kubernetes has to provide and then what those organizations are ready to push to production.
Right.
And so when we looked at it, so there were different levels of those gaps. So one was obviously, I think the first one when developers start working with Kubernetes is like, hey, how do I deploy my applications over there? How I run my applications, how I monitor, and so on and so forth. And that's where products like OpenShift were playing, right? So providing the full pass on top of the Kubernetes as a layer for your application management. I think the assumption that we did back in the days, we're saying, well, this is the problem that open source community will address very quickly. And, because that's what kind of gets the community excited, how you simplify the application deployment, how you simplify application development. And we see those tools popping up one after the other.
Gremlin is a chaos engineering service built by engineers from companies like Amazon, Netflix, Google, and Dropbox. To learn more about chaos engineering, join the Slack community over at gremlin.com/Slack. With thousands of active members, it's a great place to network and find resources to improve your organization's resilience.
On the other hand, I would say the most conservative part of organization of every enterprise is, of IT organization is the actual IT operations, IT infrastructure, and so on. So for them, this whole new tool set is a drastic change of how they run their applications, how they run their infrastructure. So when we were ready to deploy and we started talking to IT, with those customers, IT came back to us saying, well, really, we need 18 to 24 months to prepare ourselves to deliver stuff to production.
Oh, wow.
Right. So, and that's when application is already built, tested, and ready to be deployed.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's where we started. So we looked at it and said, well, the real problem is really on operation sides of the house. So we need to make the solution that would allow those IT organizations that are not really well prepared to run Kubernetes today to run it. And so, that put several, I would say, directions of development. First, and I think it's obvious today, but first was high availability, reliability. We put tons of effort to make sure that those clusters run 24/7 and they never stop as long as it's possible, as much as it's possible. And if they stop for some reason, we can automatically recover. So part of Kublr is part of Kublr product is the self-healing mechanism on different levels, right? So we have our code running on every node of Kubernetes clusters that we deploy. That will make sure that all the Kubernetes components are operational. So, if, let's say, kubelet goes down, our code will restart it. If it cannot restart the kubelet, we'll try to restart the whole machine and so on and so forth. Then the way we provision infrastructure, if we have access to API, we'll also make sure that if, virtual machine goes down, it will be restarted, it will be recreated and reconnected to the cluster automatically. And then in cases where we cannot recover automatically, so we kind of translate between events that we read from Kubernetes to events that IT team can understand, right? It's not just, hey, pod cannot be scheduled or something like that, and now you need to understand why it's happening. It's more of like, we read the pod cannot be scheduled event and translate it, you need to add resources to your cluster. So this is the level of alerting and advice to some degree that we give teams that run Kubernetes clusters with Kublr. And answering your question, back to your question, so we have all the centralized monitoring component, which serves a number of dashboards based on Prometheus and Grafana that IT teams can look at. We have Alert Manager installed and pre-configured to send notifications about majority of most important alerts, and it's all also open so that we can customize, or customers customize it for their very specific cases.
Right, that makes sense. It's interesting talking about this gap too, right? And it seems like there are a lot, especially of enterprise tools, that address some of those gaps that you're talking about. One thing I'm wondering about is, what about small companies, right? Or medium-sized companies that can't afford the enterprise solutions? when are we going to get to the point where it's, simpler for them?
So I think that's that we do have smaller customers as well, and
right.
The idea that we had was we want to bring enterprise quality Kubernetes clusters to everyone. Right. I mean, on the other end, I would say that majority of small and medium business is well served by cloud providers. I mean, unless you have very specific security requirements, configuration requirements, GKE, EKS, AKS is a great solution. Right?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It's managed for you. It really comes with the cost of infrastructure, so you don't have to pay anything on top. It can be provisioned very quickly, can be deprovisioned very quickly. Why don't you use it? But if you even being a small customer have multi-cloud, multi-region, hybrid requirements, or again some very specific security or networking configuration, so that's where you need to take something like Kublr.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what are all of the different options that you have with Kublr? I mean, in a smaller setup, what I'm really concerned with is, did the thing get deployed and is it going to run reliably? But yeah, you're talking about, okay, I've got this other edge case thing that I need to worry about. So yeah, what options do you have?
Well, we do deploy. I mean, one of the use cases that we support is deployment to different infrastructures, right? So and moving your clusters or moving your data from one place to the other. Let's say today you're on Google Cloud. Even for a smaller startup, it's actually interesting. We have one of the customers, which is relatively small startup. They started in Google Cloud. They got cloud startup credits, all right? So 100K of free cloud infrastructure. Uh-huh. So they don't pay for infrastructure. They tried to use GKE. GKE didn't work. So, we found a way to work together. Even, so they use it, but they know that maybe in a year or so they will have to switch, because then, the credits are expired and they may need to go back to data center, or they may need to go to AWS or something like that. And I think the reason they picked or decided to go with Kublr is that even with the product like that, you still need to invest into some DevOps workflow around the tool, right? So I mean, if someone needs to read alerts, someone needs to read metrics, someone needs to read logs files, and so on and so forth. So if you build everything around one specific cloud solution, like Stackdriver for Google, for example, right? So then you're in the AWS and you have to rebuild everything from scratch. So we give this level of abstraction when they actually build their tooling around Prometheus, Elasticsearch, Grafana, Kibana, and all this kind of stuff, the open source stuff that we deliver as a part of the solution. So when they switch from one cloud to the other cloud, that's not going to be that dramatic in terms of how much needs to be redone. So, and as I mentioned, so from this perspective, we support all the public clouds, so you can deploy to GKE, AKS, EKS. We have VMware automation, so basically can provision infrastructure through VMware vSphere API. And then something that we call bring your own infrastructure, which is, bare metal deployment or just virtual machine deployment, those kinds.
Makes sense. So is there anything that you're adding into it now that people don't have at the moment?
Yes, we, as we kind of deploying those clusters to customers, always looking what's next, right? So, why, let's say one of those top 3 banks that we work with doesn't go all Kubernetes today. So what holds them, right? Mm-hmm. Why do they still rely on virtual machines and so on? And so the more they run in Kubernetes, the more requirements we kind of uncover. And so among many of our customers, we realize that support for multi-site is kind of a next big barrier for Kubernetes adoption. So none of them really run critical applications or high availability applications in one region or in one data center, right? So, I mean, they need to, multiply it. And we have customers that run the same kind of applications in 9 different data centers just to allow availability, across the whole country. So, and then there are solutions for virtual machines that enable high availability and reliability across different data centers and regions. For virtual machines, there's nothing today for Kubernetes. I mean, none of our competitors, and including us at this point, right, in the release state, support those multi-site multi-site orchestration. So, and that's what we announced at KubeCon as a technical preview. That's something that we run with a limited set of our customers today, and hopefully we'll make it available for a wider audience in Q1 2020.
Nice.
Which is, in a couple of months.
Yeah, cool. Are there other things that you wanted to make sure that we covered? Because I'm not sure if I'm asking all of the right questions. I'm guessing there are probably some things that are important to know about this that I just haven't thought of off the top of my head.
I think I feel like we are talking about Kublr, a bit too much. But anyway, so I think that the one thing to mention that coming back to the multi-site capabilities, would probably love to expand on it a little bit. So the idea that the problem as we see it, right? So there's or the way our customers running today with Kublr or some of our competitors is that really, when all of us support deployment to different environments and from one single location, from one single, platform, we can deploy a number of clusters across the different regions, across different data centers, and so on and so forth. The platform itself has to be deployed somewhere.
Right.
And so the question is which region or which data center you trust more to put the control plane in it. So, and that's at the end, it turns into customers deploying this control plane in every region, making every region or making every data center independent. So, we saw the cases where we had customers with 9 different regions. And so every region had the deployment of the control plane, centralized logging and centralized monitoring to run cluster on this region. But it's terrible, right?
Yeah.
Because now the next step is like, well, something still need to orchestrate across these 9 regions. So if one region goes down, right, so you need to write a script that will switch load balancer, that will start recovery procedures, probably migrate data, or, if you still can, or mark other region as active for this set of data. And when the recovery is completed, move everything back. So those kind of things. And so customers ended up building those kind of scripts. But now you also need to be able to run the script reliably. So the next question is where you run it. And, we're getting back to the base, so where you need to, figure out how to run it reliably across several locations. So what we build in as a Kublr 2.0 is actually the capability to spread Kublr platform across several locations, right? So and make it run in the clustered mode. So let's say if you have 9 regions, you want to be able to sustain 2 regions down, right? So you spread Kublr across 5 regions. You don't have to deploy it to all 9. You can spread it across 5, and then you can actually run those scripts, the recovery scripts, failover scripts inside Kublr platform, and Kublr will make sure that those run, those will run reliably no matter what happens. So we actually integrate with OpenFaaS at this point, and we'll provide the capabilities for our customers to develop those scripts as single functions that Kublr will be able to run to react to different, disasters in the overall deployment.
Are you stuck at home climbing the walls when you should be hanging out with the community at the latest conference to get canceled? Are you wondering where to hear your JavaScript heroes like Amy Knight and Douglas Crockford and Chris Heilman? After the cancellations, I decided to put on a JavaScript conference for you, online. I invited my favorite folks from around the web and got them to come speak at an online event just for you. Go to jsremoteconf.com and check out our speakers and schedule. The conference is on May 14th and 15th. The call for proposals is open until March 31st. Come join us at an online conference that we guarantee will keep you safe and keep you informed. jsremoteconf.com. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we see this with other systems, right? Databases is an example of this, right? Where they spread data around and they spread control Or sometimes there's just, there's kind of a master, but if it goes down, it has some way of orchestrating, okay, this is the new master. And yeah, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do that with infrastructure. I mean, it's tricky, right? Because you've moved down a level or two from the database, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a problem that needs to be solved. And, if I'm putting together a high availability system, I want it close to my users or close to the data, for regulatory reasons or whatever. Then yeah, I don't want to have to log into 9 control planes. Oh, where's this one? Oh, it's doing the same thing as this other one. It's just that the data's over there. Yeah, being able to just say, okay, I've got the control in one place. I know how to access it. It's monitoring itself. It'll yell at me if it needs me to get involved. And yeah.
And we see, today, because those tools or the platform that supports this functionality is not available, we see organizations are doing it. And, from our experience, easily can turn into multi-month, multi-million-dollar projects, right? Just to get everything set up and coordinated or synchronized across different regions. That takes time. And, when it takes time on infrastructure level, it means that it kind of, again, delays the application deployments and application modernization and all this kind of stuff.
Yep. Very cool. So is there a way that people can actually try out Kublr?
Yep. I mean, the Kublr platform is available for free for non-production environments. All right. So it's easy we have what we call Kublr. Probably my marketing will kill me if I mention it again, but I used to call it Kublr in a box. It's basically a simple Docker container that you can, start from Docker Hub, Docker start or Docker run, then Kublr or something like that. And this will give you, almost fully functional Kublr control plane inside one Docker box. And you can create clusters, you can destroy clusters, upgrade clusters, and from this Docker container. Now, if you want to explore the full Kublr platform functionality, so this actual box will help you to bootstrap your Kublr platform clusters that will provide the full set of tools.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know if I have any other questions. Anything else that we should dive into before we do some shout outs and wrap up?
No, I think, we covered pretty much everything. I'm looking at the invitation now. It talks about self-healing nodes and self-healing infrastructure. I think we covered, this as well. And yeah, I don't have anything else in mind.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead and do some picks. Picks are a segment of the show where we just shout out about stuff that we're enjoying or involved in or things like that. I'll go ahead and go first so you can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at. So one pick I have, I don't know if I picked this last week, so if I did, I'm sorry. I've been listening to a book on Audible called Generation Z Unfiltered. And it talks about, younger people and, the differences between when I grew up and when they grew up and the ways that they think and things like that. And it's been really, really interesting just to think about it and go, okay, these are my kids. This is the world they're growing up in. These are the things that they have to deal with. These are the challenges that I need to prepare them for and just how to do that, right? Because I think sometimes we want to save them from a bunch of trouble. And so what we wind up doing is we wind up going out of our way to kind of shield them from problems instead of preparing them for the problems. And it's really made me think. I've been talking about it with a few friends of mine too, but, just basically that thought of, okay, instead of how do I get in the way of the trouble that will come their way because of this stuff, it becomes how do I let them sort of crash and skin their knee without breaking their neck, right? And so, giving them those opportunities to learn, okay, you don't want to put stuff like that on Facebook, right? You have a phone. You don't want to take these kinds of pictures with your phone, and you definitely don't want your friends to use them, have them, because if your friends become not your friends tomorrow, right? And so just those kinds of things. And so, yeah, just finding that balance and being able to talk to them kind of where they're at instead of where I came from, where cell phones weren't even a thing when I was a kid. And, they were starting to be a thing when I was a teenager. But even then, I think I had one friend that had a cell phone and, 5 years earlier, a cell phone was open the briefcase, pull out this thing that's the size of a loaf of bread and stick it by your head. And so, I just didn't grow up with it. And so, I don't have the same kind of challenge or worry or, the kinds of challenges that are going to come out of the kind of connectedness that they have. So anyway, it's been really great. So I'm going to pick that. I think it's by Tim Elmore.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned it. I'm a parent again, right? So as I mentioned, back to this game, everything from scratch. So I was reading another article, in a similar direction last week, where they were talking about how this new parenting habits make miserable, or new parenting habits makes miserable employees, right? So, or basically those kids, they're not ready to work. So I think what they mention is that the relationships between parents and kids have changed to the degree that now kids demand and parents execute on this demand, right? So, and that's so much different from what I experienced when I was a child, or when we had some responsibilities at home and so on and so forth. So the problem is that when those kids graduate and start their first jobs, they still try to apply the same approach with like, hey, what can you do for me? Versus like, well, that's what I can do for you, to be helpful here. And that's basically, to some degree, create the issues for themselves and their new work. So it's much harder for them to adapt for the new reality, something that they were not exposed for first 22 years of their life. And my thinking on that was also, how can I not fall into this new paradigm of like trying to make childhood of my kids very happy experience, no problems, no issues, but at the same time prepare them for the future.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. So that's my pick. Do you have something you want to shout out about? TV show, book, movie, something that you've enjoyed?
Well, I got my Rabalinks drones last week, the small programmable drones that with the development studio, and it was so much fun last week to do some first development exercises with my kids, where just like a simple fly up, fly down, left, right, turn around, and so on and so forth. So I tried to get them to do some simple programming here and there for some time now, but it's hard when you have to operate bits and bytes, and then majority of the things available on internet are a bit too childish, I would say. So now drone is something really cool, and when you can make it fly with your own commands, I think that's what turned them to finally try it, and hope we will continue doing it, because they're curious to learn what else they can do now, because this is something tangible they can see flying, based on their development.
Yep, that sounds like a ton of fun.
It is.
Good deal. If people want to connect with you online, where are the best places to do that?
Well, Twitter and LinkedIn, I guess. I mean, I check my LinkedIn regularly, and have updated contact information over there, and then Twitter as well.
And what's your Twitter handle?
That would be V Koltovich. That comes from my first name, and then Koltovich is my last name.
Good deal. All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you for coming and talking to me for a half hour or so.
Yep, sure. Thank you for having me here, Charles.
All right, folks. We'll have another one next week. And in the meantime, max out. Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.